The Westwood Sports Club was alive with laughter and noise, the sound of sneakers screeching on the polished floor as a group of boys messed around with a basketball. They weren't serious players, just loud kids who liked showing off to each other, tossing the ball without focus and mocking anyone who couldn't keep up. On the sidelines, pushing a mop along the floor, was Daniel, the club's cleaner. He kept his head down, quiet as always, his uniform worn, his back bent from long days of labor. To them, he was invisible, until one of the boys decided to make him the target of their joke. "Hey cleaner," Jake, the loudest of the group, shouted across the court. He spun the ball in his hand before tossing it in Daniel's direction. "Why don't you take a shot? Let's see if you even know how to touch a basketball." His friends erupted in laughter, clapping, whistling, waiting for the embarrassment they thought was coming. Daniel froze for a moment. He had heard every insult before, brushed off every snide remark, but something in the way they sneered at him lit a spark. He set the mop carefully against the wall and picked up the ball. The laughter grew louder. "Careful, don't hurt yourself," one of them called out. Another leaned back and said, "This'll be fun to watch." Daniel walked slowly toward the three-point line. His steps were calm, his face unreadable. He bounced the ball once, twice, 3 times. In that small act, something changed in him. His shoulders straightened, his grip firmed, and his eyes focused like they hadn't in years. Without hesitation, he bent his knees, lifted the ball, and released it in one fluid motion. The ball soared high, cutting through the air in a perfect arc. The gym grew silent as all eyes followed it. Then swish. It dropped cleanly through the net, without touching the rim. The laughter died instantly. The boys' jaws hung open. Even the assistant coach, who had been smirking a moment before, lowered her eyes in surprise. Daniel didn't celebrate. He didn't say a word. He simply placed the ball back on the floor, picked up his mop, and continued his work as if nothing had happened. But the silence that followed him told a different story. Something had shifted that day. Later that evening, Daniel returned to his small apartment, weary from hours of cleaning. His son, Ethan, sat at the table surrounded by open notebooks, chewing on his pencil as he tried to finish his homework. The boy looked up and gave his father a tired smile. "Hey, Dad, how was work?" Daniel smiled faintly, placing 2 bowls of soup on the table. "Busy, just busy," he replied, choosing not to mention the humiliation or even the perfect shot. He didn't like talking about himself, but Ethan noticed something in his father's eyes, a faraway look, as if his mind was replaying something important. The very next day, Ethan heard whispers at school. 2 older boys were talking in the hallway. "Did you see the cleaner yesterday? Swished it from way back like nothing." "No way. I swear on my life, cleaner shoots better than half the team." Ethan's heart raced. For months, his classmates had mocked him. "Your dad's just a janitor, your dad scrubs toilets." He had always lowered his head in shame. But this time, he stood tall, and for the first time he said it with pride, "That's my dad." Back at the club, Daniel's quiet display hadn't been forgotten. The head coach approached him after practice. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" he asked curiously. Daniel just shook his head. "Long time ago," but the coach wasn't convinced. "You've got more than just a shot. You've got focus, control. We could use someone like you to guide the boys. Ever think about helping us out?" Daniel hesitated. He had spent so long mopping these floors that the idea of standing on them as anything other than a cleaner felt impossible. "I'm just here to work," he said quietly, but the coach replied firmly, "Not anymore, you're not." Not everyone welcomed the idea. Whispers spread among the wealthy parents. "A cleaner coaching our kids? This is ridiculous. He doesn't even have qualifications. We pay for the best, not for janitors." The criticism reached Daniel, cutting deep into the little confidence he had. That night, as he scrubbed the empty court alone, the words echoed in his head. Maybe they were right. Maybe he didn't belong. But when he got home, he found Ethan asleep at the table, his homework half finished, his head resting on his arm. Daniel gently lifted him and carried him to bed, whispering softly, "One day it'll all be better." Sitting alone afterward, he glanced at the old pair of basketball shoes he had kept in the corner of his closet. They were battered, worn from years long gone, but they reminded him of the player he once was before life forced him to sacrifice everything. Over the following weeks, Daniel began helping the kids at the club. He didn't shout or show off like other trainers. Instead, he taught them about discipline, respect, and humility. Basketball isn't about ego, he told them during one practice. It's about showing up even when no one believes in you. The boys listened, not because they had to, but because they felt something genuine in his voice. Slowly, the same kids who had mocked him began to look up to him. Ethan watched all of this unfold with awe. The man he had once been teased for, the father who came home with tired eyes and calloused hands, was now the man people admired. And in the eyes of his son, Daniel was more than just a janitor. He was proof that dignity and talent can't be hidden forever. The night of the final club showcase, when players and parents gathered to watch, Daniel was invited to demonstrate. Whispers filled the hall again, a cleaner on the court, but this time Daniel didn't flinch. He picked up the ball, walked to half court, and without hesitation released it. The crowd gasped as the ball sailed high, then dropped straight through the net. Silence filled the room, followed by thunderous applause. For once, no one could laugh. Ethan cheered the loudest. And in that moment, Daniel wasn't just a cleaner. He was a father, a mentor, and a man who had finally silenced every doubt.